Uh, This is an open meeting. You in the gallery are welcome to be here because it's open to the public. You can't speak, but you can certainly listen. And I guess if we called upon you and asked you to speak, that'd be okay. But generally, you're there to listen and not participate in what we call a workshop. Because it's a workshop, there's no motions. We can't make any decisions here. No motions and no votes. So as chairman, I try to do the best I can to feel the tenor in the room and head nods and puzzle looks and that kind of stuff to kind of take us through the stuff that we have to do. We do have a new member on our panel for the Planning and Zoning Commission. And I'm going to let him introduce himself, and then we'll all have to go around and introduce ourselves like we did last time. But since we have a new member, Morgan.
Thank you very much. Morgan Brown, I'm from Pleasanton. I've got 160 acres out east, just a mile off the state line. And my wife Marcia and I, we've had 2 sons, and the result of all that is 5 grandchildren. So I'm retired now from the energy industry. I've been chasing pipelines and helping power plant stuff for 47 years. So I finally gave that up. But then I got notified that this might be something that would be worthwhile, and I'm sure it will be. I want to thank you all.
All right. Thank you, Morgan. Dan, you want to start and do the introductions?
Morgan's known me since I was in diapers, so I feel like I need to introduce
Okay.
myself.
David, you want to go? Just introduce.
Oh, yeah. I'm Dave Fisher, west of Centerville, retired business distributor, and fairly new to the board and looking forward to serving.
Morgan, I'm Jeff Hines. I live just east and south of Parker, a little ways on our family farm, and I work at the high school up in Paola.
Yeah, okay.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Hi, I am Emily Face. We're the Proctor people on the board for solar panels. We've lived down here over 20 years. We own a business and we just are here to help.
Nice to meet you.
Mark Briggs. I live 2 miles south of the power plant on family farm and do a little farming of my own, do general construction of concrete up in the city, and got 4 little kiddos that go to Prairie View.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Ed Anderson, District 1.
I'm sorry?
Ed Anderson, District 1.
Okay, all right. Very good, sir. Thank you.
Elizabeth Staten. I live about 1.5 miles east of Pleasanton, so close to where you live.
Yep.
I've lived here about 15 years. My family's been here for quite a while, longer than that. Yeah, that's about it.
With your grandfather, Delbert?
Yes. And my other great grandfather was John Reese.
Yes, okay. I know a lot more grandfathers than grandmothers. Forgive me. Well, thank you. It's very nice to meet you.
We still live out on that land over there.
Wonderful.
I'm Paul Porter from the Lacine area. I've been serving on the zoning for a couple of years and write software by day and enjoying my time here. I've been living in this area since about 2014.
Wonderful.
So
Wonderful. Nice to meet you too.
And Morgan, you know me because you remind me, we played ball against each other in high school.
Yes, sir.
You at Pleasanton and me at Jayhawk Linn. So,
That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
This is pre-Jayhawk Linn.
well, even, Blue Mountain. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I was in the first graduating class at Jayhawk Linn.
I'll be
So,
Yeah.
I'll have to say they beat us in basketball all the time. So,
wasn't part of my doing, I'll guarantee you that.
Charlie?
I was looking to buy the court.
And I also know Morgan.
Yeah, good to see
Okay,
you.
all right, All right. Check these things off as we go. So we've, just to recap where we were last week, or last time we met, we decided there were 5 Wednesdays in the month of January, and we'd meet every Wednesday, 6:30. That's still the plan. My hope anyway, is that we can get this done in 5 sessions and move on and do what we need to do. But tonight, the 2 sections were 14-101 and 102, and then 14-201. These seem to be pretty straightforward, but I never try not to ever make that assumption. I thought what I'd do is read those, just so we got an oral hearing about them, and then we'll have a discussion, and in that discussion, we'll have to kind of decide whether we want to settle in the issues on those particular articles tonight, or park them for discussion later on. I think as we work through this, we may have some articles that we should defer until we cover a separate article, because they may have some interaction with each other. But we'll kind of play that out as we go and play it by ear, and what makes sense to us, we'll do. So
Richard, my notes from last meeting said that we'd be talking about sections 4 and 5 tonight because we felt that 1 through 3 was pretty mundane.
Oh, exactly. 4 and 5. Now, I had the note right here. Yeah. Okay, so let me read those, and then we'll start through them. Section 14-4, commercial and utility spec, general requirements for SECSs and conditional use permits. Conditional use permit applications for commercial and utility SECs shall comply with provisions of section 14-4 through 14-13. All applications for the SCCS conditional use permit shall bear the stamp of a Kansas licensed professional engineer and comply with the following and with the requirements of Article 20 of these regulations. Upon determination of the zoning administrator and that application is complete, it will be presented to the Planning Commission. The zoning administrator shall provide the Planning Commission with a recommendation as to compliance of the application with the requirements of this article and Article 20. The Planning Commission may request the review of other county officials, a Kansas licensed professional engineer, and/or the third parties in determining compliance of the applications of these regulations. So that's 14-4. Comments or concerns? Darren, have you got any concerns? Nope. Okay. So we'll park that one and say it's been reviewed, and we may have to come back to it, but for right now, I think we're good to go. 14-401, concentrating solar thermal devices are prohibited in all zoning districts except where allowed as accessory uses. 14-402 is ground cover. In order to reduce the soil erosion and storm water runoff, disturbed lands, including land under and around the solar panels, shall be seeded with a revegetation seed mix of native grass and flowers. B of that, of number 402, ground cover shall be continually maintained throughout the term of the conditional use permit. Any questions or concerns about 402, 14-402?
I don't know how detailed we want to get, but I made 2 notes about this. On item A, I'd like to see the inclusion of cool season grasses as an option to supplement warm season grasses as well as native flowers. I think it's just a little bit too specific to tie our hands and say it can only be native grasses. Fescue, for example, is one of the most hardy grass covers in our area and would need the least amount of care.
And it's a cold weather.
Yeah, fescue's cold weather. I disagree with that. And the reason I disagree with it is because of the wildlife. I mean, nothing does well in fescue. And it's the issue I've been fighting for 15 years to try to get my quail back, because it absolutely smothers the quail. So it's not favorable to native species. I mean, I can understand wanting cool season. I don't know, there's a cool season grass that is favorable to them. I mean, native grass is what we started with. It's not like it's going to erode. We've got hay meadows all over the county that are in good shape. So I'd hate to see fescue put in between these.
I mean, I would counter with, we could likely see existing fescue pasture with a solar panel site and to say that it wouldn't be suitable to continue with the same type of grass that's already on it. I mean, I hear your consideration, but I think that should be left up to the landowner. It's their land. And if the goal is to make sure that we are making sure we're controlling erosion and stormwater runoff, then a cool season grass would certainly meet that need.
I hate to see cool season grasses encouraged. I understand what you're saying. If you're putting a solar farm in a fescue field and fescue's already there, but we hate to go into a hay meadow that doesn't have any fescue and encourage the developer to put in fescue.
Other ideas or comments about that issue?
Could we put in a clause saying where areas are disturbed, that they need to replace that that disturbed dirt with native grasses? Instead of saying you have to have native grasses entirely, instead of like replanting a fescue field, have it just to where they have tilled the dirt or disturbed the dirt, have that being replaced.
Replace with native, sure, yeah.
Or would the fescue take over that area?
Well, fescue generally, eventually it will,
Yeah.
but to plant it would just,
Would this be the place, I'm not sure that, we talk about herbicides?
In my opinion, that'd be item B, where it talked about continually maintained.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think B would cover that topic.
My comment to B that I had was, I think every one of us might have a differing opinion about continually maintained and what that could amount to.
Yes.
I think that's just a really broad statement saying continually maintain. And I don't really know if I have a suggestion on what it should say. I just, as I read through that, I think, you ask 5 different people and they may give you 5 different answers on what that actually means. And it may not be the intent of what we actually want it to be.
I made a note of that very thing for me and explain what's the definition of maintenance, because it would be absurd to think that it needs to be mowed. But at the same time, the whole purpose of that is to control stormwater runoff as well as minimize erosion. And so maintenance, in my estimation, would be maintaining a viable stand of grass to ensure that both of those things are controlled appropriately. Unless it's specified, somebody else may have a different opinion.
I know in a lot of projects that we do, it would, and I can't think of the wording exactly, but on the seeding, it would say that, it would have to be, shall be seeded with, a mix of native grasses and flowers, and then like basically maintain till like 80% growth is theirs. You need something so that way they don't seed it once, it doesn't come up, and then they just
They
walk
walk
away.
away.
Well,
I don't know the terminology.
their SWIP permit will require that they maintain stormwater protection until vegetation is reestablished. I'm more concerned about 10 years down the road,
Yeah.
what's maintained, because their stormwater permit's going to require that they reestablish vegetation under whatever conditions we tell them that they have to.
To your question about more detail, 14.9 is where we're asking for the maintenance plan specifically.
Okay.
So I think if we need to make additions, that would probably be the place. And I wonder if that's where the herbicide might be mentioned, if we're concerned about herbicide. As far as elaboration, definition, and putting it in the right pigeonhole.
And you said what section is that?
14.9.
Yeah, operation and maintenance plan.
So where in our discussion do we bring in a solar company for their opinion on this?
I'm sorry, what?
So where in our discussions, I mean, I know we have them here every week, if we're going to solar company. Where do we bring them in? I mean, if they have anything to say about this.
Well, we've got one representative from the
Right.
solar companies with us. That's Josh.
Right.
Do you want him to speak?
Well, I just wondered if he had anything, if he has anything to say, then say it. If you
Josh?
don't,
I mean, I'd be happy to answer questions. I mean, I think that, it's we pointed out the operation and maintenance plan. We would put together and lay that out for specific comments or things that, need to be expanded on in that process. That's where I think that would come in. In general, native grasses, native flowers, and pollinators are the most important things we want for reseeding. But the point earlier as far as a SWIP and your National Pollution Discharge Prevention Plan is required for construction, during construction, then until stabilization afterwards. I think that the operations and maintenance plan, we get to that point for a couple times, but there probably should be a specific, I think mentioned somewhere else, but like, who's the contact, right? There's an issue with the storm and it washed something out. How is that going to be addressed? Who needs to be contacted? Because we will have staff that there's possibility to address that. So I think that would be a part of the plan. We would put that in. If you want to make it a requirement, then I would suggest something in that.
Is it Ed? Is that right? At the zoning and planning meeting where the large crowd was at, you made some really nice comments about how impressed you were with the site that you toured that Evergy had set up.
Rural,
Heartland.
Heartland. Yeah, sorry, that came out wrong. What type of ground cover did they have there, and what was your opinion about the way that looked, and how was it maintained?
It was tall grass, and it was a grass that was supposed to just get so high and just level off at that height.
Okay.
They were just in operation, so all the planting and shrubs and that was not done yet. So what I seen, it was clean underneath, no brushing inside the fencing area, but it was a tall grass, and I think it was a fescue, but I'm not for sure.
I don't think it's fescue. Do you remember, Charlene?
I think it was.
I think it was a native grass. The impression I came away from on that visit was this was just like the CRP ground that I had planted myself. Native grass, and if there ever becomes an invasive weed, which purple thistles are, you have to spray those and get rid of them immediately. But I was left with the impression that it's pretty much like CRP ground, buffalo grass or another native grass. Again, maintenance of that is they don't want any weeds, noxious weeds or any spreading weeds at all.
So just to be clear, the presence of a noxious weed like Serratia lespedeza or musk thistles, for that matter, would be expected to be maintained in the same manner that any property owner would have. I mean, the presence is not appropriate, and you can be reported for that.
Yeah, but can we extrapolate that all from that one statement?
No, I mean, that's an expectation for anybody. You shouldn't have to put that in writing. Other codes cover that.
right.
What do we want to do with B? Ground cover shall be continually maintained throughout the term of the conditional use permit. Is that section 9? Just refer to section 9?
Yeah, I think it does make sense after reading section 9 that if we're gonna put any, because section 9 kind of details some stuff out. I think if we're gonna add any additional detail to it, I think section 9 is probably where you would address
So can we put in the print there, as the second sentence refers to
section
section
9.
9?
Yeah. I think so. And then I think we could address it there. That would suffice.
Okay, back to A. Do we want to change the wording or add to the wording there? The key is revegetation seed mix of native grasses and flowers. That native grass and flowers are pretty key to that. And it probably wouldn't, that wouldn't include fescue being.
No, I understand that. Fescue is just an example. Brome is another one, bluegrass, et cetera.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a sticking point for me, but I will say this, that the primary goal is to minimize erosion. Cool season grasses most definitely establish themselves at a quicker rate. You plant CRP, you're probably 3 years out from excellent erosion control versus 3 to 6 months out on a cool season grass. So if you got a highly erodible site, it gives you more flexibility to have that as an option.
We could put something, another sentence in there, something in regard to other vegetation can be considered as part of the conditional use permit.
I'm a member of a team, so if I'm out
I
on
mean,
that,
I don't know how-
I'm not gonna cry foul.
I mean, does that open it up too much for your comfort level, or?
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
Because that's-
there's other ways of, if the concern's erosion control, and I'm getting out of my league here, so throwing this out in case anybody has any ideas, but if I'm planting CRP and I'm concerned with erosion control, couldn't I plant wheat for the first year to hold that ground until that CRP comes in? Is there something like that without having to put in a cool season grass? I mean, CRP is done all over the county, all over the state,
Right.
and there has to be areas where erosion is a concern. There's a reason that fescue and bluegrass, Bermuda is not in that seed mix.
What you're describing as a nurse crop or a cover crop, those are
Right.
typically not used when you establish CRP, but it doesn't mean you can't.
So I just hate to see us go outside, anything that would be, in
So
the CRP field.
Wildlife's been a concern with some of the people that spoke. If this is a way to assuage some of those concerns by being more wildlife friendly because of the presence of things that pollinators can utilize, which you made reference to or whatever, it's an excellent concession to make.
I don't think that needs to be in there, because if we decide to do a conditional use permit that says something and we all agree on it, then it could be in there, but it doesn't have to be in the regulations.
Let me suggest this. Let's park this for this time being, just as it is. And we can all go back and do our own homework. And then let's open it up for some discussion next Wednesday and see if we can reach a conclusion and find some common ground. That work for everybody? All right.
Yes. Just briefly, back to 401. We didn't do anything there. I would like to see a definition in our definition list for concentrated solar thermal devices, because there is none. And we're assuming that people understand what that is.
Those are the ones that use mirrors to direct to a central point, and that's how they produce the electricity.
But you're saying we don't have a definition for that?
We do not
anywhere
have a
else?
definition in this document for,
Oh,
When I was rereading this, I had to look it up, so that would be a good
so
idea.
this, for example, the one we got
think I
from
actually
the
have to
thesis had a
read it.
definition from the state. Concentrated solar thermal device and concentrated solar power means an electric generation system that uses mirrors or lenses to reflect and concentrate sunlight onto a receiver that is heated to a higher temperature in order to spin a turbine or power an engine.
That's the state's definition?
That was the definition provided in the example in the document that they sent from the, this proposed.
It's in a proposed state statute. It's not.
It's just, I'm just throwing it out as,
Right,
as an
right.
example.
And I agree with you.
We have nothing, so
Yeah.
I'd like to have some.
The definition sounds good.
Can we simply refer to another document to say,
I think it should be in the definition.
yeah, there's a definition section, 14.201,
right?
or two is definitions. I agree, because I was thinking it was defined in here, but I was remembering what Emily had sent, because I read that as well, so.
Okay, so the definition you read,
I'm not saying that that's what we should use. I'm just, that was right there in front of me.
It's a good one.
I don't have any qualms with that definition.
read it again. Please.
Hang on, let me find the spot. Concentrating solar thermal device and concentrated solar power means an electric generation system that uses mirrors or lenses to reflect and concentrate sunlight onto a receiver that is heated to a higher temperature in order to spin a turbine or power an engine.
All right, we can make that D, just what he read under section 201. Hearing heads nod, watching heads nod, don't hear him, see him. All right. Let's, okay, I'm done. Let's
Promise?
move in that direction. Can't make a decision, but we can say that's kind of where we're headed.
That was a good point.
And could you get that to Darren so we have the wording of it?
Yes.
You got it? Okay, all right. Okay. So are we done with 14-401 and 14-402?
401. I maybe just be dense, but I'm trying to understand what that's telling us. Concentrating solar thermal devices are prohibited in all zoning districts except where allowed as accessory use. What's that mean? No one's spouting up, so maybe I'm not the only one that doesn't understand what it means.
Oh, I missed that. That's a
I
good
believe
point.
there was discussion about allowing some domestic use, small scale.
Yeah,
As I-
how does that go back to domestic though? That's where because there's section in here about
I
domestic.
agree, it's confusing.
Yeah, I just don't even understand what that means.
I think we should just strike it.
Darren, do you remember any discussion about that section down, trying to get to?
I think part of the discussion was is that I asked him to sort of clarify some. Between the commercial and the.
So in, Article 16(7) is accessory uses. And, 701, number 14, domestic solar energy conversion systems when located in the agricultural, countryside, residential, commercial, and public districts, and further subject to the requirements set forth in Article 14 of these regulations. So if you go to Article 14 and go under domestic solar are allowed as accessory uses in the agricultural, residential, countryside, and commercial, public use zoning districts.
So what's your pleasure?
I'm still confused by it.
I think, aren't we saying that if somebody wanted to do that in a domestic situation, let's just say so that they got sunlight, that it was better, that was okay.
I think I'm the one that made it confusing because I was saying, because concentrated solar thermal device can be just about anything. I mean, you've got experimenters, that's a hot water heater, that's a parabolic dish
Right.
that they used to make for fun, from Mother Earth magazine. And so I think that was his out.
I've seen them turn into ovens.
Yeah.
Right.
And so if we were blanketly saying you can't do a concentrated solar thermal device, we weren't disallowing some guy in his backyard playing around with his old satellite dish, which I've seen done. Put mirrors all over it and burn 2x4s with it.
That's what I think.
I think that was the discussion.
So then why is it under commercial then?
Yeah,
I think it's just,
that's why there's a whole section about domestic.
Yeah.
That's,
So I think we scratch it,
I think it should be struck. It's just confusing.
just end districts.
I'm still confused even after you explained it though.
David, you're saying, just leave the one sentence, controlling solar thermal devices are prohibited in all zoning districts, period.
I think that's more clear
It's certainly more clear.
in the commercial section.
In all commercial.
Or just say commercial concentrating solar thermal.
Right.
Commercial concentrating solar thermal
That even makes
devices.
it clear. Yeah.
I like the inclusion of commercial.
Okay, unless I hear different, I'm putting it in. Speak now, forever hold your peace. Tim. All right. So I see heads nodding. We're gonna add commercial to the first of that sentence and stop the sentence at, right after district with a period. We're ready to go. Heads nod. Any opposing? Okay, let's go with that. Okay, anything else in that 14-401? I think we got that settled. Going back to 14-402, are we pretty set with that then? All right. Are we ready for 14-403? Hearing no opposition, underground installation of lines, all commercial and utility SECS shall install power collection lines and communication lines underground and whenever possible, under or at the edge of a project access roads in order to minimize soil disturbances. That seems pretty straightforward to me. I don't see how we could be very opposed to that. That's common sense. This is B, above ground transmissions lines may be utilized in public road right of way or easements. And then there's C.
I've got something on D.
Okay, let me read C and we'll go back.
Okay.
We'll go back. The requirements of A above may be waived by the Board of County Commissioners upon finding that there are existing conditions which justify alternative above ground installation and that such installation would be adverse to the
Would
public interest. Would not be adverse to the public interest. Okay, back to B.
Yeah, I'd propose that we only allow above ground when there are existing lines in place. So we're not adding any poles. So we've got a situation where there's an easement there and there's no poles. As it's written, we're allowing them to put in poles and above ground lines. I'm suggesting the only way they're able to do that is if there's existing lines in place. So we're not adding any poles.
Haven't the commissioner just been arguing nonstop about putting poles in public right of ways?
Right.
In our easements?
Yes.
So in a way, I disagree with David, but like you said, in the public roads right of way, we need to go along with what the commissioners have been saying. And that they are allowing, make sure I'm right, Darren here, poles in the road rights of ways, but they have to have easements, is that correct? Darren?
No, what it's saying is that they can be allowed in the right of way or the easements.
The pole?
Yeah, so technically, if a utility company sets a pole, if you look at them, it's usually on the inside of a person's fence because that's the easement's the outside of the fence. They just made him move a whole string of poles. What road out there is that, David? The very last road in the county on the west side.
Baskerville or Arthur.
Arthur Road? It's one of them, and it's off 31 Highway. Evergy set a row of poles in the easement, and they made him move them to the other side of the fence. So
They put it in the
they don't want to put the poles in the easements? Is that what you're saying?
It was in-
Because it was on the road side of the fence.
They just made him move a bore pit out of the easement over on the landowner side, right? So,
Right.
Who's the they we're talking about?
Huh?
Who's the they?
the commissioners,
Commissioners.
yeah. So what we're saying here is we're telling them to put their poles where the commissioners are saying they don't want any poles,
That's
right?
what I think. Yeah. But maybe,
What I'm suggesting, whether it's on the easement or on their own, is we don't add additional poles.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
and I disagree with that.
There is a bit of a safety concern with putting more utilities underground in terms of fence construction and road projects, et cetera. Those are hit, as somebody that hit a water main over the weekend because of Rural Water District 2 didn't come out to do a locate. I mean, I lived it firsthand. Those are hidden issues. I agree that I don't like looking at poles either, though.
And that does fit with the comprehensive plan.
In terms of protecting
In terms of,
the landscape.
the rural landscape and beauty.
So if we adopted the concept that he's saying that we would stay underground there, C would still give the county commissioners the opportunity to go away from that if we included the requirements of A and B above may be waived by the county commissioners. because there may be types of terrain, which would include extremely rocky areas, and not much soil that would prevent that. And so it would encourage, first, no overhead poles, and second, the provision of workaround to allow a project to move forward if necessary.
Cost has always been a big consideration.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I think it should be outside the public road right away. Right?
Private.
The boar pit.
Yeah, because the commissioners have been.
Yeah, regardless of
That's what they're-
anything,
that's
this
what they're-
doesn't match what the commission's asking
Right.
for right now.
Completely
Something has to happen to be.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't think it's fair to develop long-term policy based on who sitting commission members are. We should be seeking to draft policy that it doesn't matter who is there to interpret it currently. This is a holistic approach, and you would hope to modify it on a very infrequent basis.
I don't disagree with that. But I also feel like, just to the point earlier about the comprehensive plan, I don't think any of us want to just litter our roadways with a whole bunch more power. I think that goes against everything that we're trying to do. And I don't think any commissioner sitting in the chair is going to disagree with that, so.
So do you think that by encouraging or making it a requirement to go underground, but leaving C to include a provision to allow overhead poles when necessary?
I think we should tell them they need to go underground, keep things underground, and unless they absolutely have to,
Okay.
for some prohibiting reason.
So you are allowing the commissioners the right to do that in here.
Yeah, I think we should just strike B completely and say that your plan should be based on everything being underground. If you have an exception to that, follow C and make a recommendation of why you have to go above ground.
So really, what you're saying, and it seems like a good way to do it, me, is just eliminate B.
Yeah, because I think that A and C accomplish what you're
Same
saying.
thing.
So if B's gone, where in C does it say that it's okay to use above ground transmission line?
Requirements of A above, which is saying that it all has to be underground, may be waived by the Board of County Commissioners, finding there's existing conditions that justify it.
David, are you saying that above ground transmission lines may be utilized if existing? Yeah, that's what I said initially, but I kind of like the way the discussion's going.
So A is power collection, B is transmission, so those are two different.
Oh, yeah, I follow you.
Yeah.
So, well, I have another question then I'm probably need to ask Solar back there. I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
Josh,
Josh. On many installations that I've seen, the interconnecting wiring from panel to panel is definitely not below ground. It's just loose wire ran and they stick a little spool in the ground with a loop on it and they just run the wire through it and it's just out there and people could trip over it if they want it, if they're walking across it. Do you typically everything from panel to panel goes underground, or do you have interconnecting wiring underneath the panels?
So the racking will hold wires till we get the inverters, and then the inverters will have underground collection that run from the inverter to the project substation.
So that's what the power collections you're saying from the inverter on.
Yeah.
so each row of the panels, at the end of it has an inverter.
Right.
And that inverter with an underground line goes to
Our project substation.
the substation.
Okay.
Okay.
And then,
So the wiring from panel to panel, for say there's 100 yards long of panels, all that wiring is just exposed on the bottom side of those panels.
yeah, it's in a tray.
Okay. All right, I was just not knowing the nomenclature of what they're calling what, so I follow. But I see your point though about the difference between power collection and distribution though. All we have to do then is just after power collection lines, put comma and distribution lines or transmission lines. And communication lines, just add transmission lines into that
Do
section.
we already have regulations for transmission lines in the county, not covered under solar? I mean, surely with utility contractors, there's some kind of regulations?
Darren, do you know?
I don't know the answer to that.
So,
No, either.
don't think so.
To make sure that we're not just letting them
Right.
throw them out wherever they want, 1 foot off the road or 10 foot. I would think there's some kind of general.
Considering how uniform they are throughout the county, you'd expect
Yes.
there to be a code attached to it.
I wanted to say, who spoke first when we did the meeting here?
Oh, the very beginning?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Andy Mayhew touched on something with this at that first meeting we had. That's what made me think of it, that there is a general regulation on utility lines or something that they need to follow with.
Darren, do you by any chance have what Andy maybe said?
I'm looking to see if I can.
So I could look it up real quick.
While he's looking for that, I really liked your suggestion about striking B and taking the words transmission lines and including them in A. So A could read all commercial and utility SEC shall install transmission lines, power collection lines, and communication lines underground. Then you could strike B
And
still be
wherever
a work.
possible, under
Yep.
or at the edge of the project access.
We'd strike B, add the words transmission lines to A, and then C, which would now become B, would then have a workaround for the commissioners for project by project solution.
I think that's a very viable solution.
Sounds good.
Your head's nodding, but I really kind of want to know what Andy said about that, if we can find it.
I don't know if anybody cares, but something else he had also stated was in ground cover, he said he would like to see a maintenance agreement for what is under the panels, but what is the circumstance would be for failure to maintain?
That'd be, go to codes court, right? That'd be the
It would be a
repercussions.
violation of the zoning reg and a violation of the conditional use permit, and they would be given so much time to rectify it, and it'd be like 30 days. But, or at least show progress to rectify it, and if they don't, we take them to court.
We do have repercussions if they don't follow it.
So 14403, above ground transmission lines placed in accordance of the county public works department. That's what it said.
Yeah, I think Andy was referring to, whatever the public works department requirements are for stuff like that. And I don't know what those are. We'd have to get with Sean. And I'll make a note to talk to Sean about it.
I do think it sort of goes to what the commissioners have been working on though, about where the bore pit or the pole is. I think that's what you think.
So just to restate this, looks like we're taking out B, except where it says transmission lines and adding that into after the word, two words shall install transmission lines, power collection lines, and communication lines, make those three all together. And then C becomes B. Okay, all right.
Can I ask a question? And it may go to Josh, but as far as the wires that you say come out of each panel in the panels and they're in a, or did you say they were in a?
They're in a rack.
Okay, is there any kind of protective conduit that goes on that?
Yeah, sits like a tray.
But the wires themselves,
Yeah, sit in
so they come in and they go into it? Okay, so there's nothing exposed.
I think that the tray is three-sided, because when they get installed, they get put in on top.
Mhm.
I'm not sure if they're fully enclosed. It depends on the racking manufacturer.
Okay. And then another question is, who is going to go onto the property to make sure that everything is in line?
Why is everybody turning away at me?
I don't know.
So it would be me, but one of my recommendations would be that we hire a outside inspector to inspect the whole project to completion, or do inspections periodically as the project's being, built. Cause I can maintain, or I can't maintain, but I can inspect grass and I can tell if there's wires loose or something like that. But to actually build a project, the county's gonna have to hire, well, not the county, because we can require that the developer of the project in a condition of the conditional use permit, that they have to pay for an outside inspector.
Okay. Is that something that needs to be put in here?
No, because that'd be, I mean, it can be put in there, but it can also be something that's added as a condition.
So I think something like that would be better off in regulations, because what if we added it to Clearway and another company came in and it was EDF and we didn't add it? It would be pretty unfair. And I think in the commercial world that I'm in, everything needs to be inspected, or that you're not going to get the product you need, or the safety concerns are going to be missed or something.
And
So a lot of the projects I do, they're called an RPR, Resident Project Representative. So they're hired by the owner, paid for by me, the contractor. I have to provide a trailer for them and everything that they need, and they are the owner's eyes and ears for the whole duration of that project. And they obviously are educated in water projects is where I have to buy them a lot, where we're building water treatment plants. So something that with that concept, I think, is what everyone is getting at, for the owner's representative, which would be the county's representative. I don't know where that would go in here, I think, but,
That was gonna be my question. So is that part C of this section, or does that go somewhere else?
I think it should be its own section, instead of implying that it just relates to underground installation lines. It should be its own section in 14.4 or whatever, wherever we put it. That way it implies it's everything.
Yeah, because they'd be inspecting everything, not just underground transmission lines. It could be
Right.
placement of panels to make sure fire trucks can get through, or just your setbacks are correct, your.
you're making sure they're following the plan that they submitted that said they were going to do. So that could be part of this. There's 14.6 construction management plan, probably be a place where it would need to fall into.
Well, site plan would include some of the things like you're talking about, access for emergency vehicles.
Yeah.
So I think.
Someone making sure that they're actually following that is the
Let's
representative.
just say if they're supposed to be 50 foot between the panels, they could go in there and put them at 25 if nobody checks them.
Yeah, I agree. It looks like it is appropriately placed in 14-6.
Yeah.
Yeah. Darren, you want to work on some verbiage for that? Yeah, sure.
What's RPR an
Yes, sir.
acronym for again?
Resident project
Your
representative.
copious spare
And
time. you need to-
Darren, I can pull it from like a Burns and McDonald spec and send you to what it says about this, and you can just plagiarize that. So that way you're not starting from scratch.
Is that on recording?
Yeah, send me something.
Yeah, I can do that.
All right. Are we ready to go to 14-404? Hearing no opposition. Height of solar panels and related structures. Ground-mounted SECS structures other than constructed for electrical lines shall not exceed 15 feet above ground level.
I suggest we add when measured at maximum vertical position.
Do that to me again.
When measured at maximum vertical position.
I believe that's how it's phrased as well in the proposed bill that was sent over as well. But I think if that ever ends up being passed, it's good that some of our verbiage matches.
You have to
David,
spend-
how is that different than just saying shall not exceed 15 feet above ground level?
Would
Well,
that thing,
maybe we can ask Josh on this. Isn't there a difference if the panel's flat?
and when it turns up?
No, it turns, I mean, we don't want to measure it at the lowest position. We want to measure at the highest position.
I mean, when I read this, that's how I interpret it, that it would be, you know,
Up and down.
it's, what's maximum tilt is the height. So I mean, adding this
Shall not exceed.
crossing your feet,
Okay.
stopping that, that's how I read
Okay.
What are your average heights that you typically put in?
it. Below 15 feet.
Emily, when we looked at the, when we took that field trip and looked at the one that Evergy has, I think we measured 12 feet up was what it was.
I think you're probably right.
Yeah.
Why would one be 15 and somewhere else to be 10?
You might have to, I mean, if anything, some of the, if you have to build a little bit taller to maybe go over a floodplain or something, like, you know, we want to measure a floodplain and say that there's a potential of this particular area to get flooded, you may want to raise them a little bit. So we see a taller pole.
Well, it sounds like that's,
It's just to be in a little more detail.
yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody okay with that?
Absolutely.
Shall not exceed 15 feet above ground level when measured from maximum vertical position. Okay. 14-405, power purchase agreement. If an applicant has an executed power purchase agreement at the time of application, the applicant shall provide with the application either such agreement or at the applicant's discretion, an affidavit for non-confidential information regarding such agreement.
Why is there two options in there? They can provide it with the application or at the applicant's discretion.
I think it means, or at the applicant's discretion, they can provide an affidavit of non-confidential information. Not, I mean, you're saying they should be able to.
No, I would want a clarification.
Okay.
I'm not
I mean,
questioning. I'm asking.
that's how I read it, is that that's the either or. Is that they can provide it just as it is, or they can say at their discretion, they want to provide an affidavit of non-confidential information.
So the power purchase agreement is basically what is in line with the power plant or where the power is going to go.
Sell it too.
Would that be your interpretation, Josh?
Yeah, power purchase agreement is basically a contract between a project and utility laying out the terms of that agreement. And, you know, this came up when we were working with this originally, and the PPA itself is pretty confidential. So no issue in events available, providing, you know, proof that it exists, but it'd be a violation of that confidentiality clause provided for the utility.
So it's, oh, I'm sorry, go
I
ahead.
was gonna say, it'd be no different than a farmer not wanting to tell everybody what they're paying for rent on their farm. You put you at a competitive
But you,
disadvantage.
but hey, you have a contract?
Right.
Yeah.
And I can show you I have a contract, but it's black on how much I'm paying. Okay. So the purpose of a power purchase agreement being disclosed is to guarantee that we're not, as the county commissioners are not approving a conditional use permit. It's constructed and then no one's purchasing the energy, so it's just sitting there idle. Is that the purpose? Okay.
Josh?
No, yep. I mean, this was also, you know, something that was discussed, and I think that the way it's written is, you know, if this is available, we'll provide, you know, I mean, we won't provide a copy of it, provide something that says we have.
So we won't.
What
know
if
where
it's
it's
not
going.
available?
If it's not available, then it wouldn't be provided.
Kind of like a certificate of insurance. You're not giving details.
Sure.
I guess I don't understand why we would basically state that they would supply it and then accept that they won't supply it.
No, it's, the way this reads is if it's available, it needs to be part of the application, right? So we can start a permit process while we're also pursuing that in parallel. If we haven't already, then it would be part of the application, and it would be, you know, the way it's written, it would be a copy of it or an affidavit saying it exists. Because we wouldn't provide it. Can't provide it, but something saying, yes, this is in place.
So an agreement, the legal document, both parties have entered into a contract. I'm selling you this power for this price for this length of time. And here it is for everyone to see. An affidavit is a sworn statement, which is legally binding, saying that this agreement exists, but I don't want to disclose the details because it's private information. But a contract does exist for someone to buy the power that will be generated here.
So I'm thinking we can just leave this section the way it is,
I think so.
now that we understand it better. Any opposition to that? Okay, hearing none. 14-406. Total countywide acreage cap for SECS. In order to promote the objectives of protecting agricultural land and preserving the rural character of Linn County, consistent with the 2022 comprehensive plan, a cap of 8,000 acres is fixed for the total acreage for SECS conditional use permits. And just the history on that is we started out at 4,000. And after listening to several points of view, we decided to bump that out to 8,000. So there was some controversy already with that. So commissioners, please speak.
So I'm trying to remember back. How exactly did we get from 4 to 8?
I think it was decided when we were talking about protecting prime farmland, and you know, if they don't, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, I'm just putting out numbers here, but okay, so you're gonna have to do a project, somebody have 3,000 acres, but we're saying you can't do 3,000 acres, but that's what they're applying for, but they can only put it on 1,300 acres. Because of prime farmland, they can only use 15%. Am I wrong? I'm confused. That's right.
I thought we were talking.
Isn't that what brought that up? Is that we added to it because we cut back because of prime?
Let me go back one step further. Darren, wasn't 4,000 1% of the acreage in Linn County?
Right.
Yes.
So part of the discussion was, okay, 1%, 2%, are we really ruining the rural nature of the county by doubling it and having 2% of the total acreage in the county be open for solar development? And I think this is something that the solar companies frankly wanted. They wanted more opportunity to build their structures in the county.
But wasn't there also a discussion of starting with 4 and going to 8 if we needed to?
I believe that was the case, but we ended up saying,
I'm just trying to revisit that.
yeah.
I think you're correct with some video footage that I'd watched that originally was 4. It got moved to 8. I think, I don't know which company, somebody had suggested 8 to make it more manageable in size. And from what I remember reading through, you guys didn't want to start at 4 and move to 8 because you felt like if you moved it up, then that opens a door that may never shut again. Because if you move it up, you know, another 4,000 acres for a certain company, then the next company you're going to move it up for them.
And COP, when he presented it to the commissioners, he mentioned something, and I want to say that he even said something about it could possibly be more, but that was just in conversation that he had. So my question would be, if this says 8,000 acres, we can't go above that, correct?
Right.
Which would include the prime farmland concessions of how that applies towards the deal. I love the concept of protecting our landscape and all of the feedback we got about why people live in our county. I hate to rush all the way to the 8,000 knowing that we get partway into this and realize it's been a mistake. So whether you're the biggest supporter of solar energy in the county or you are the biggest skeptic, you're left with questions that can't be answered
Yeah.
until we have some projects arise. So to prevent the guise of we only increase from 4,000 to 8,000 to satisfy one particular solar company or one particular project, I think common ground would be to start with 4,000 acres, to set a concrete date on when the county commissioners would open up for public hearing and comment to consider, are we now going to go to the full 8,000? So irregardless of another project has come online or another CUP application has been put in place, we have already clearly defined when we're going to consider if the 4,000 acres has been successful, and we are now willing to go ahead and hear from everyone else to go to the full 8,000.
I like that idea, and the only reason is that this is, at this point, 8,000 acres is the biggest project in the state of Kansas right now that we know of.
It would be a series of projects that could total 8,000.
Correct.
And
Right.
No one's, we don't know of anyone
Yeah.
who's going to come in and gather 8,000
I
acres.
think one other thing that we sort of looked at, and tell me if I'm wrong, is when we were saying 4,000, let's just say a project does come in, it does, then are we like cutting out the 7-acre project that Heartland wants to do? You know, then what are we gonna do? Are we gonna say, oh, sorry, you know, your 7 acres, we can't do it now because this project's doing 4,000? I don't,
Well, you could put a provision in there for projects under a certain size to be excluded from
I
that
think
once
we
the
have
cap
Well,
is
we
met.
already have,
we
that.
have to-
There's 0 to 160.
Yep.
There's 160 and above to 8,000.
Okay.
I'd have to do some further research, but there was, on another set of zoning regulations that I've read through, I think they called it like a garden solar system or something, but it kind of refers to more, so then you have like your residential, then you have those small, like your 7-acre commercial sites, and they kind of have their own gig, and then it's like the true commercial. But they had a certain terminology, and I'd have to look back, and I could bring it in our next meeting. But I did think that was something pretty handy. I actually forgot my notes at home today, but I think that might be something that would help with that.
And if I remember right, Mr. Kaup offered that option because Heartland's would be technically in the domestic. The only reason it's commercial is because power leaves the property. That's the only thing that makes that site commercial. And I think that he had said that at one time, and planning and zoning decided against it and just went domestic and commercial.
Commercial and utility.
Right.
Yeah. And I still think that's a pretty good way to go. You got domestic, and then, commercial is 0 to 160 acres, and then anything above 160 acres is utility. And it's a pretty, to me, that makes a lot of sense. It's a good, demarcation.
Where's that defined in here?
Oh.
$14,201.
Ah, okay, thank you.
Yep.
Are you talking about, in this document, it calls it limited scale. It's under 20 acres. It's called limited scale, non-commercial.
It was something different. I'll try to.
That's fine.
try to provide it. I thought it kind of was, would touch on something like that. I guess one thing I have with the total acres, so whether you do the 4 or the 8,000, you also have to understand there's some places in the county it's already been affected by a large scale project. So, for instance, I live by the power plant that already has 6 or 7, 8,000 acres. So potentially we've already lost 1% of our land in that area that could be purchased or used for other things. So I think to then turn around and lose another 1% in that area, I think it's pretty detrimental to those landowners themselves. And I don't think we want to make a wasteland of one corner of the county or exactly, I think, you add both of those together, that's a substantial amount. You get it close to 15,000 acres. It's a lot of ground.
Yeah.
To the south of us, we do have the federal refuge, which is great. But then again, there's no opportunity for someone to buy or anything like that. So I do think there's some unique areas in the county that I think we have to watch having stuff like that.
So you could solve that riddle through zoning regulations, and you could mark off areas of the county that solar, or any commercial project couldn't be
Right.
housed within. The western side of the county looks completely different in terms of the population and the landscape.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing what you're saying. In fact, what I've been sharing with others, I would love to visit with people that either were in favor of the power plant or adamantly against it before it was constructed there, and to know how they feel about it after it's been in existence for 40 years, to see if those concerns came to fruition or if they were concerned about things that really weren't problems. And so just to speak towards that end, once again, I'll go back to what I said, whether you're the biggest supporter or the biggest opponent to solar energy, you still are left with questions. And so until some commercial project is put in place, we won't know what corrective action need to take place to have made that project a little bit better. And so if you establish a lower limit for a period of time with a clear sunset on when you would consider expanding it even further, you make sure that you get the opportunity to correct some things. And, you know, it's compromise. And I think all of us are not happy when we see our tax bill come in the mail. You can't help but understand through pilot dollars and the full 8,000 or even 4,000, what it could do for our county in terms of increase in services or decrease in personal property tax bills. But if we go for the full 8,000, it could be such a turnoff to our county that our county commissioners really feel like they're forced to say, we can't do this.
So you're suggesting a 4,000 maximum for now, with that sunsetting in whatever number of years you think to be
We
reviewed,
need to make a recommendation.
that can be reviewed and then go up only to 8,000 at that point?
And after a period of time, it could be revisited again to determine if 8,000 is the right number or it needs to be expanded even further. I don't think that would be likely, but none of us know. We don't have a single commercial solar farm here.
Following along that idea, I think sitting here today and just trying to project a date on when that would be, I think would be tough. I think we need to set it at so many years after completion of the first project rather than an actual date.
That's what I was going to say when you finished speaking. We don't even have a project to evaluate. We don't know how long it would take to upscale one.
Yeah, so it's 2 years, 3 years, whatever, after completion of the first project. Or, maybe that's,
With that, I mean, is 4,000 acres a realistic number? If it's prime ag, they'd only be able to do 2,000 acres, correct? I know several other regulations I've read, they'll do a max size of 1,000 acres. Just thinking, that's a lot of acres for
well,
a test.
yeah,
So you think 4,000 is too much?
I just think it's a lot.
Okay.
So you were talking about the power plant before and after
Yeah,
and talking
right,
to
yeah.
people. And I think anybody who lives in the county is aware of the Grossart lawsuit. And she didn't learn until years later that she got sick because of the dumping that they were doing and getting into the aquifer, which is just 25 feet down. And it actually, they traced it from the power plant through all the streams, even over to Butler. And so what we have in our area where we're going to put these, there's already been proof, not litigated, of some stuff that has happened because of the power plants. And one of our concerns is not clear, we haven't seen any of their stuff, but EDF, who has signed leases, they're going to drill wells onto the property and it's going to go down to the aquifer. So we're going to take a chance of putting in the area that's already been contaminated more detriment. That's one of our main concerns where we're at.
Why were they drilling?
I don't know. It just says that on each property, they're going to drill several different wells.
I just want to go back to what I usually talk about and what I talk about all the time is we know that Effigy put out an RFP because they want to be able to produce so much megawatts from the solar farms. So if we don't give them enough, like I said, I'm always concerned about the county getting sued. I'm concerned about the legislature saying, sorry guys, this is what they've done to us before. Sorry guys, we're taking it over. The county has no control. So, I mean, I think that we need to be really reasonable because the power plant has put out that RFP to find out, because they want this much megawatts. So, if we start cutting that back, Well, what is Effort gonna do about that?
So I think we're mixing two conversations together, and I think the meeting that was so well attended, most people in attendance didn't know the purpose of the meeting, and that was to give comments regarding the zoning regulations. And instead, it turned into a referendum on a project that may or may not even be proposed at some point in time. And so I'm hearing your concerns. If I lived in the area, I'd have those concerns too. But sitting here living in a different area, knowing that there are other suitable areas in the county, we can't say because of one what-if scenario in the northeast part of the county that we're going to completely, what do we put? We put a moratorium in place. Now no one can consider it.
But what I'm saying is that there needs to be stricter regulations.
Sure, yeah.
And
So let's
because,
put them in here when we
yeah,
get to
that,
that right
yes,
part,
yeah, that was the
Yeah.
point of what I was saying,
Okay.
not to just not do anything, but in the area that you're looking at doing, where you were talking about 4,000 versus 8,000 acres, I don't disagree with that. So,
Okay. So Mark, I asked you, you think 4,000 is too much, and you said it's a lot. I agree. So my notes actually say to myself as I was reading, I put 2, 4, 6, and 8. Meaning, why can't you start with 2, then go to 4, then go to 6, then go to 8? As long as it's clearly defined what triggers public comment and hearing, input for the commissioners to make sure we're going in the right direction. But to listen to what Charlene said, if you set the number too low and we get an RFP and you realize, oh my gosh, I'm not even gonna have access to enough, it's not worth my time. If we set that bar too low, we won't get a commercial project to do a test with, to see if it is not harmful to our way of life and it's generating tax dollars that make that trade-off a fair trade.
and the electricity that we pay now doesn't go up, because that is a common theme when you look at all the counties that have done it, is that because of the intermittent
Yep.
power surges, that it can create up to 90% increases in power, the electricity that people pay for.
Well, I think a good term on that is if you say start at 2, so if it's prime ag land, they could only do 1,000 acres of solar panels. I still think 1,000 acres is a lot, but their first project was roughed in at 1,300 acres. So obviously it's probably not too far off of being realistic. I think up by, and I don't quote me on this, I want to say by Hawthorne, they just did 67 acres. So maybe 1,000 acres is a lot. I don't know. I don't know the solar world that much. I've been learning it, but I'm not no expert yet.
So thinking outside the box a little bit, 4,000 acres is a lot of land. Agree. And if it's all in one area, that's a whole lot of land. Is there a consideration to saying the 4,000 acres has to be divided up, where it's not just 4,000 acres right here in this corner of the county, and that's the only thing you
Put
can
a
do?
maximum on
I think
for-
development.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just throwing out
You
ideas.
could put something, which I've seen in other regulations, that if you have one project, like Josh has a project, and I think it's 2,500 feet at this point, that from project to project, you can maximize the distance between the projects in accordance to what you think should be.
I've seen something like that. I think
Yeah.
I've seen 5 miles. I don't know if it was Pawnee County or somewhere I'd read today, maybe Reno or somewhere, that they did a cap per project and then did a minimum of 5 acres in between each project. That way they didn't oversaturate one area in the county.
5 acres or 5 miles?
Is it fair to say because
Not 5 acres, 5
5
Yeah,
miles?
5
miles.
miles. Sorry.
Josh, what have you seen in practice, in reality out there? Have you seen anywhere there's distance requirements between projects?
Yeah, I mean, there's already a distance requirement in
Right.
here. So
500 feet.
2,500 is
Yeah.
what's in there now.
Right.
That's one
So
item.
basically a half mile.
Half mile.
Yeah, so if you're revisiting that, that's one thing. I think, extending that out, like, it's not unreasonable. I
Does
think
it-
if your project's
does
that
it-
close.
Does it affect you if another project isn't buttoned up to yours? Or do you rely upon that to get?
No.
100%?
No, it's not. I mean, not for solar projects. I mean, they can be next to each other and not interfere, but they can also be separated. and not interfere. The one thing I think, because we're talking about a few different things, the one thing that I want to point out though is the 4 to the 8 also happened because, I'll be honest, I was making arguments to the, planning commission and to the commissioners about the prime farmland reservation and the acreage cap. I thought that was a double dip. And so, because your permitted area is what is calculating that number, of which is then being, cut a percentage because of the prime farm. So, when you're talking about 8,000 acres, that's not 8,000 acres of solar panels. That's, at most 4, but the project's not gonna be built entirely.
That's the buffer zone, all of
Yeah,
it. It's setback. and all that.
So that's
But you can't, nobody can come in and do anything else on that acreage.
not where it's built, but the rest remains prime farm, whatever the landowner wants to do. Right?
I don't know. Can they come in and do whatever they want with it? EDF, not on EDFs.
Josh, does it make sense for you as the developer to build solar anywhere else except around the plant where you can get to the grid easily? So I ask that because if the power plant was not here, I don't think you'd be in Linn County trying to build solar right now. Is that a fair statement?
Well, to be honest, I haven't spent time looking around the rest of the county.
To see if there was another power plant? There's not.
That's the only one.
The biggest thing is not necessarily the power plant, but it's the infrastructure.
Yeah, the grid. Yeah.
So, those run, every direction out of it.
Yeah.
So there's a world where
You have easy access to it.
chase those, right? Which is typically one of the first things we review is how are we gonna tie into the existing grid? But in this instance, you've seen the interest in this particular area because of the proximity. There are probably other areas in the county that.
Well, there's a power plant that's just a little bit north and a little bit west of Lawrence.
It's more the transmission line.
Yeah, so it's not the proximity of the power plant. The interest is
Well,
proximity to the grid.
let me take
Are
a
you
step.
saying that? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, but originally, what multiple folks were interested in is being able to tie directly into a scene substation, which is right next to their stacks. Evergy said no room, so that changed a little bit dynamic. So, tapping a line is great, connecting to the scene substation is better.
But that's off base now.
That's all.
Could it come back?
Evergy.
They talk to you?
Yeah, I was thinking as we talk through this, if
Your next request is in.
we kind of a double-edged sword. We limit it to the point to where there's no interest anymore because the size is too small. And it doesn't make sense to build anywhere else in the county because they don't have the infrastructure and the grid that be able to tap the grid. Then, but by way of regulation, we basically just told all the companies have lost interest and we haven't even given them a chance.
I agree, Daniel. I think if we don't at least give a little bit of leeway, other industries will not have any interest at all coming in here if they think the regulations and the rules are gonna be detrimental, and they're not. They just won't take the time to come into Linn County and possibly put up some more commercial businesses. Because it's one thing that we do need in this county is employment. You need that.
But I haven't heard anyone disagree with, unless they're just not speaking up, with lowering it down to 4,000 acres and following the idea of setting
Opportunity for public comment and then
Yeah.
go for the.
set a duration for after in-service date to review it again. It seems like everyone seems to think that's reasonable.
You'd see how much the county's making from it. You'd see the benefits or the non-benefits.
Yeah, and you can see if the government's gonna cut all subsidies and if they're just gonna be an open field full of solar panels out there that don't do
Exactly,
anything.
exactly.
But if that's the case, I think 4,000 acres is a lot to gamble that. I don't.
Yeah,
mind
but the
looking at what
rules, the
everybody else
rules
does.
don't change. If they're there and there's a conditional use permit issued, the bond is there, they have to decommission. They have,
Yeah.
they have to
Money
retain
set
that.
aside.
They're not gonna walk.
Understood.
Yeah,
So,
I agree with that.
So a lot of skeptics when the ethanol plant was built in Garnett, and how long will those subsidies last? That industry is flourishing, right? But it didn't necessarily have to end that way. It could have went the other direction too. And so, since we don't know 20 years from now what it's going to look like, or even 5, let's be sensible about this. Let's be open-minded. Let's
No, I can tell you,
invite somebody in, but not give everything away all at once.
we're building Ford's electric vehicle battery plant in Kentucky right now.
Yeah.
They just delayed the second phase of that project by 5 years because they said the demand's not there for the batteries right now. No, things change pretty quick.
Yeah.
So,
welcome to the roller coaster.
Okay, where are we? 4,000 with some verbiage that in a certain amount of time, certain amount of experiences that we have with the solar plants, it might move to 8,000. Is that kind of where we're at?
It could be added, additional acres could be added after maybe it's been there in operation for so many years or something.
Upon completion of the.
Completion of the first project, yeah.
Yeah, and then look at that.
Or it could float. It could just be 4,000 acres, reviewed every, 2 years.
Yeah.
That way we don't have to figure out, well, they finished, on this date, a year from that date. There's no math involved, other than when this was approved.
So 4,000 acres to begin with and a biannual review.
It's pretty simple.
The
If
likelihood
they
that
give you enough time, we can figure out what's going on. To Emily's point, I mean, you need to, there's all kinds of aspects you need to figure out. One of the biggest ones is the revenue that's everybody thinks all this revenue is going to be coming into pilot funds. We'll know. We may not know.
I can tell you if everyone's property taxes go down 50%, you're gonna have a lot more people saying, let's build more of this.
or even if they don't agree.
But David, I think, I mean, it's a good point you're making, but 2 years, nothing's changed. Okay. We'll do it we'll look at it another 2 years. No changes now. We'll just look at another 2 years.
With the pilot program, would it take 10 years to know what it's really gonna potentially do for the county?
I don't
Because
think
it's a
it would.
10-year tax abatement, right?
You
Yeah,
find it,
well, you get
you know
the
exactly
pilot-
what you have.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Stepping on you.
As I,
Pilot program is going on before the tax abatement comes off. That's the idea of the pilot program. And so you would know after a certain amount of time whether you're getting those funds. There's other challenges with that, and that they're not guaranteed. You have to be sure you negotiate a good pilot fund that is in writing and guaranteed, because some of them aren't. So it would give you an idea, but I'm not sure 2 years is going to give you enough. I mean, I like your idea of completion of the project for that time period to start, at least to give you an idea what's,
Like 2 years after the completion?
what's that?
2 years after the completion? The
I
first,
like that better than just 2 years from now.
So the purpose of a review, or at least my purpose of bringing it to the group, is it gives our county commissioners the opportunity to get targeted feedback from the residents of the county. And then, once you judge the mood of the county, you'll know what the right thing to do is. And so if in 2 years there has been no action, there would be no reason to move forward with an expansion. If after 4 years we still have questions, they still may not do it. And so I think it's the best of both worlds. We may not have answers yet, and since we don't have answers, we stay the course. But as soon as we start getting answers back, we could stay at 4 or expand to 6 or 8.
but you're saying that we would review every 2 years,
I like that.
biannual review.
I like
After
that.
the completion,
I would say after the approval of the first conditional use
Josh,
permit.
your project, if you started tomorrow, ETA, not weather related, but typically, how long does it take to put that together?
To put the project together?
Yes.
Build it?
Yeah, if you started tomorrow.
I mean, 16 months, 18 months.
Okay.
we may identify problems during the construction that were hidden issues, you know, and so even if they're not transmitting yet, you still may want to have public hearing and comment and to consider, was this a good decision or not?
Mm-hmm.
Josh, once a project is completed, say you got a 2,000 acre, how many employees does that require?
I'd say 5 to 10.
5 to 10?
Are they your employees or local people?
I mean, they'd be local people who would be our employees.
Okay, so you don't bring somebody from Chicago, it would be somebody hired here.
So you would train people locally if possible?
Just logistically, it's a lot easier, right? Someone living here already, job.
Morgan, I really like what you said about our county needs jobs. I agree completely. Solar energy may not be a huge employer, but the tax revenue could still be something that's a benefit.
I understand.
Darren, can you explain the 10-year, first 10-year thing on that that's negotiated between the board of the commissioners and the energy company?
So David explained it. So there's a tax abatement for 10 years. During that 10-year period, they will negotiate a price that's paid for those 10 years. And then
In lieu of property tax.
in lieu of property tax. And then after 10 years, if the state doesn't do another 10 years or whatever, then they would start paying property tax.
But the thing about this money during the first 10 years, it can be used at the commissioner's discretion. They don't have to say, oh, half of it goes to schools, half of it goes here, and half of it goes, or a quarter of it goes.
That's how I understand it. That's how I understand it too.
So it'd go in the general fund?
Can't answer that.
Okay.
I don't know what they would do.
But as I understand it, the commissioners would have discretion to use that for those 10 years the way they want to use that money.
So it's not them, the companies coming in and saying, well, we'll give this much to the schools or we'll give this much to the roads.
No,
It's this
they give
much
to the-
money is given to the commissioners and then they decide what to do.
As I understand it,
Isn't there a contract between
And
the
the-
two? So if the company said, we would like to see this going this way, isn't there a contract between the two, the county and the company?
They can make suggestions, they can't make you do it.
Correct. Yes.
say that
The
loud.
district was.
They can make suggestions, but they can't make you do it.
So, and also the solar company can do things above payment of lieu of taxes if they choose to. They can donate stuff to schools. I can't remember what county it was, but the whole school got new iPads and, you know, they, funded the fire department with everything they needed to, in case a fire did start on. So, I mean, there's things that they do outside of the pilot program, and I'm not saying, I'm not speaking for Josh. That's just stuff that I've heard other companies doing.
Is that put in the conditional use permit that they're planning on doing this?
That's between them and,
But you can negotiate and settle on the pilot program and do that before the CUP is approved.
yes.
I think it's really important to do it in that order.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I do know that Evergy gives the fire department, Linn County Fire Department, their phone wagon. And that's a lot of bucks right there. Be used by the county. The only thing the county has to do is pay for the phone that is used on a fire. But it's ours to use, and it'll be housed in Lacey as soon as, city fire moves out of the Lacey real fire.
Well, the criticism I've heard over the years, and I'm old enough to remember that power plant being constructed and built while I was in high school. And the biggest complaint I've heard through the years is we didn't strategically use that new money to benefit the county. And I think we all ought to be concerned that whatever revenue this does produce, it's strategically placed to help the county. I did some math on this a few days ago, and I get more frustrated than anybody that we don't have good internet service anywhere in the county. And I think I asked Wes how much it was costing to put in a mile of fiber optic line between Parker and Centerville. And he said $2,000 an acre. Well, you know, if you had $10 million, you could pretty much cover the county. Probably not all of it.
2,000 a mile, not 2,000.
2,000 miles. Yeah, I said 2,000 miles. But if you had $10 million to work with, you could sure cover a lot of the county and have high, high speed and low latency internet. Wouldn't that be nice? Brings in opportunities for employment and opportunities for businesses. Yeah, we just ought to use it strategically. That's my point. Okay. So where are we? Who?
I think the concept's there, just working out the details. 2 years from project, from the time the plant's producing electricity, or 2 years from today, or I think that's what we gotta work through.
How do we want Darren to write that up?
I would propose 4,000 acre caps reviewed on a biannual basis, 2 years after the first CUP for a commercial solar project is approved in Linn County.
Sounds good. All right.
Can I make a quick comment? Sorry.
Sure.
One thing is that a conditional use permit is, when granted, is not necessarily signaling to start construction for a project.
Sure.
Right? Because I mean, you know, ability is one step. There's interconnection process. There's obviously the uptake process. So I guess I would recommend that the acreage cap take into account, I'm not sure how to word it, but what's built, not necessarily what's permitted. That makes sense. So there's a sort of first constructed, but multiple projects could get permitted. But once one's built, kind of race. But once one's built, that applies to the acreage cap, not necessarily what's permitted.
Built and in production?
Yes, because a project could get permitted and never built. That's sometimes just how the cookie crumbles. So, you know, say project A, like, had everything going for it, but they got the permit, couldn't get with the finish line, other issues. Well, now it's stuck, your system's clogged.
One of the things that the
And you wouldn't be able to go
commissioners,
through-
they commented on that when they were doing the articles, and they went back and forth, and I think what they decided was from the time that the conditional use permit is issued, they have up to a year to start the project. If it's not, they don't get their permit and they move on to someone else.
I think
That's basically
giving
planning.
conditional use permits for more acreage than what you're gonna allow could end you right in the court of law. Because we gave you a permit and then called you up and said, guess what, Josh? EDF beat you to the start. So I think that'd be a huge concern. So if they already have a year, why not just do 3 years? Because you only have a year from the time you get the cup. And then you're saying that in 2 years you should have it built. So we could just
3
do
years from issuance.
3 years from issuing.
3 years from the time of the approval of the cup.
Yeah.
Of the county's first
I think
CUP.
what Josh is describing just puts us in a position to be the police and just really would make it messy for Darren. So you got a half-baked project over here and another one over here, and you're just doing the Oklahoma land race, playing the police, saying, oh, we hit the cap when they were 2/3 done and you're only a quarter done.
Yeah.
Sorry, that just.
They can't approve more than 4,000
That
total
sounds
acres.
really.
Yeah.
There's no way.
Yeah,
So,
they could only permit that.
That's a concept.
I remember this just came up in a recent commissioners meeting too, about the 1 year from the permit, from the 1 year from the issuance of a conditional use permit that they had to start the project. That was about the Lacine you brought that up. So is that a rule now?
Darren?
So I think it says in the regulations that all conditional use permits, have to be started within a year.
Okay.
We did that. I can't remember how long, far back that was, but that was something we were suggesting, because we were getting all these projects that
Right, and then
never got off the ground.
we've had to extend a few too.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can't find it right now, but it's under the conditional use permit, and they have 1 year from the time it's issued to start their project. If they don't get it started, they gotta come back in and ask for an extension.
So,
So what about 3 years?
Or we could do it after completion. I mean, either one.
well, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
3 years after the cup or 2 years after completion.
Because I do think you'd want it done for about 2 years to, at a minimum of
I
2
do too.
years.
so two primary goals of doing this. Number one is set the acreage high enough so we don't scare away potential commercial projects. And two, make sure that it's going well before we expand, right? If we do 3 years after the first date, it allows one to likely be constructed and to get real information for our county commissioners to receive good feedback from residents. 3 years sounds great, knowing that there's that 1 year period of time, wait period.
It's also giving them, sometimes you don't want them to hurry too quick and
Yeah, for
not do
sure.
it
Yeah.
correctly.
I'm sold.
Yeah, I think we really need to look at what the review process looks like, who triggers it. The public comment's really important, but when does that start? Do the commissioners trigger the, review after 3 years, or can they table it? We kind of,
So a couple,
I'm confused of how all that's gonna work. We really gotta nail that down, so.
Isn't there a
when that
public,
3 years comes around, it's followed as we saw it.
so play this out. Let's say they fall. It's January 1st. We'll make it real easy. So of 24. So that means January 1st of 27 or 28. As you pass forward, now it's triggered. It's happening. There's a review. There's public comment, and then they decide either one to keep it at 4,000 or two to go to 6 or even to go clear up to 8, which is the maximum. But in the meantime, in that 3-year window of time, because the first project got up in 8 months because somebody came in here and was ready to rock and roll and knocked it out really quick and things are going really well, nothing says the county commissioners can't revisit these regulations and change that to 1 year, even if they wanted to. This is just a plan of action, knowing that at any time our county commissioners have the ability to change any of these regulations, however frustrating that may be or however much we may like it.
That's pretty scary.
Goes both ways. Gate swings both
It does.
ways. Right. All state statutes are that way too.
It's just ink.
That's right.
I like the 3 years and the first.
Okay, start at 4,000 and review it 3 years after the CUP's approved.
With an 8,000 acre cap.
With 8,000, yeah.
I think you're gonna want it stated up front.
8,000. All right, I see heads nodding. Anybody speaking now?
Say that again. Just say it again.
If we don't have that 8,000, the public's gonna left to be skeptical of, well, it could turn to 20,000. just
Yeah.
like
Well, I
that.
think just in general from the videos I'd watched from when Mr. Coppin spoke, like I think you need to have your maximum in there.
Clarity.
Yeah, you need
For
the
everybody.
clarification
Yeah.
of it.
And if they later on change it from 8 to 10 or 12 or whatever number we want to make up, they are going on the record and people are gonna catch wind of that.
Yes.
So you're holding their feet to the fire per se.
So we're putting it
Yeah,
first.
and after the 3 years, we'll have to do public notification, public hearing, public comment. Planning and zoning will vote on that, then it'll be a recommendation to the commissioners, and the commissioners can table it, send it back, or vote yes.
We're starting at 4 with a review after 3 years, with the possibility of going
3 years
to 8.
after the cup is issued.
so the public hearing, is that more like what took place in Lacine on the wind? Okay.
Okay, so is there anything additionally to 14-406 that we want to change or add or exclude?
Let me be clear on the acreage. How many acres?
4,000
Did we read C?
with a cap of 8.
Captivate.
Review every 3
4,000
years, or
start
3
with.
years after the CUP's been approved.
Okay,
First CUP in the county. Yeah.
all right.
Did we read C?
You think that's a good compromise?
Yeah.
Still think it's a lot to
What
start.
was your
It's a
question,
lot,
Paul?
but it's a
Well,
compromise.
I think,
Yeah.
I don't think
If
C,
it goes great, I don't think.
C
it's
needs to be
that much.
clearer
If it goes
that it
bad,
should
I
be
think it's
fully
a lot.
restored.
Say we all have questions that we can't answer.
If it goes bad, it can be.
Guys, let's talk one at a time. Paul's got,
Try and
So,
funds
Jeff-
being held and it forces them to abandon the project and clean their site up and go home.
Yeah, sorry.
Paul's got the floor. Let's let him speak.
So 406C says acreage included in an approved conditional use permit remains included until the countywide cap, until the SCCS is determined by the VOCC to be fully decommissioned or determined to have been canceled or abandoned, or at which time the acreage of the canceled, abandoned, or decommissioned SCCS shall be subtracted. It doesn't really say clearly that it needs to be fully restored to its original state.
Yeah, I agree with that. Decommission basically means offline. It doesn't mean tore down
Yeah.
and cleaned up.
I think it needs to be restored to its
Original or better.
Yes.
But isn't all that covered in
think
a,
it's somewhere
its own
else.
section?
Okay, maybe.
Maybe in,
I
Yeah.
think that goes under 14 and 10 reconditioning.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
a
yeah.
section.
That's fine.
It says, will remove structures and restore the areas in pre-construction condition.
Perfect.
Covered in 14-10.
So maybe a cross-reference would be
Yeah.
good.
I can refer to 1410.
See.
I guess something that I don't know where it would go. So if there is environmental sensitive areas in the county, where do we think we would put that in under? If we wouldn't to, not allow them in a certain area or anything like that.
But we've already got that as part of the comprehensive plan, right? I mean, there are certain areas designated for solar and wind. We don't do wind, but we got solar.
Industrial.
I was reading it today and I think it just calls out wind. I don't think it calls out solar.
Really?
If you say industrial, I mean, a lot of this, some of this ground even that's proposed right now would be actual farm ground, so I guess that I have to rezone. Just curious. One example was like they had talked about the wildlife refuge doing a different setback. Maybe that would be in setbacks, but I just didn't know if there was, I guess exclusion areas that we didn't want it, if where we would list that.
Well, we certainly did it for wind, and I remember being part of that. I just didn't remember we did. I thought my recollection was it was for wind and solar, but you're,
It's just, I think
Just
Aaron's
wind.
right. I don't remember the solar being part of it. We talked about other different districts within that map she made up for us.
right.
Solar, what, industrial and others.
Yeah, but floodplain, I guess would be a pretty good, just right off the bat, easy one, but I don't know if it even states that in here. Some I should read before I talk, but
Well, that's under 14.5 site plan. 100-year floodplain is listed for,
Yeah, that may be something.
It says it has to be listed on the site plan, but does it say it, if it's in the 100-year floodplain, it cannot be, can't be put there?
fair point.
It's Jeff's point, that's something we may want to consider when we go through 14.5.
there are some other things that I read through, some others that, setbacks of like at least 2 miles around any airports, et cetera. Just some of those things I just didn't know exactly.
We should build a solar panel at the airport. That'd be a great place for it. And get a lot more use out of it than an airport.
They get higher than Pepe lights.
In Pleasanton, we get some of the revenue.
I also saw in a couple different regulations that there was a setback from cities incorporated in them.
And yes.
Yeah.
The standard that I've read in unincorporated areas is like between 3 and 5 miles.
I think the one you sent, for incorporated, it was 3, and then for unincorporated, it was 1.
Okay, some of them are like 3. I mean, I'm not saying that the Trading Post doesn't have room for growth, but I mean, if there's solar panels there, clearly that's not gonna happen.
What'd you come up with on C, Paul?
Leave it, or just cross-reference to 1410.
Refer to 14
Okay,
dash 10.
okay. So we're past that.
We ready to move 14-407?
Yes.
In making its review of an application for a conditional use permit, the county may rely upon information as submitted by the applicant. 2, supplement the information submitted with additional analysis and/or certification by qualified sources, the cost of which may be assessed back to the applicant, and/or advise the applicant that certain analysis and study will be performed by a qualified party selected by the county.
I think we had a
Comments?
discussion on may and shall last time. I think it should be shall, the cost of which shall be assessed back to the applicant. Because in what scenario will we have the county being paid for any of these experts?
But I think it should be shall.
I tend to agree.
The
May
county,
means you can or can't.
There's wiggle room.
Shall means you got it.
What was Copp's explanation for that, though? He
you
wanted May.
could gain information through a study that would be useful on multiple projects, not site specific. And so that would be useful information for the county as a whole. And so therefore you leave it open-ended, in my opinion. I don't know if I'm saying that very well.
I didn't follow what you're saying.
I think COP just wanted to provide some latitude for the commissioners.
Okay. I agree with
I think
shall.
it should be may then.
I tend to agree.
Which, may or shall?
Shall.
Shall.
Are we all okay with that? Anything else in that section giving you heartburn?
I do have a question. When it's advised the applicant that certain analysis and studies will be performed, I kind of waffle back and forth with the regulations versus what is in the conditional use permit. And my concern is here's the regulations. And then when it comes down to it, well, we need this, this, and this from you guys, and you need to pay for it. And they go, it's not in the regulations. And then there's a lawsuit. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but that's my concern. So like, there's studies like soil samples, the visual glare of the sound. And another thing, because we have so many residents that live in this little area, there's reports that with the what am I trying to say? As far as the internet and cell phones, the frequencies can knock that out to where it's not given to the neighbors. And so I think it's important that these things are done ahead of time so we know going in that there's not going to be any issues.
I don't disagree, but I think where I disagree is I think if you try spelling them out, you're going to miss them.
Right.
And then they're going to say, well, that's not in here. The way this reads, we can make them write a report that says, can Mickey Mouse live on the land if we want to? And they have to do it. It's
That's
open.
only of the commissioners. So you put a lot of faith in 3 people.
No, that's us.
No, because after it gets sent back to you guys twice, they got to say yes or no on any one certain thing.
Agree. I mean,
So-
we make recommendation on what's put in the conditional use.
That's where I think your regulations protect the citizens a lot more than just in the cup.
I agree. But I don't think we could sit here for 7 weeks and try to list out all the possible scenarios. And I don't think you're ever going to get them all covered. It has to be broad enough that we still have the
Well, these are the things that I mentioned are in other county regulations as far as stuff that they have to provide. And that's my only thought process is if other counties are doing it, should we be doing it too?
I think if there's specific ones that we think are gonna be required for every single one, I'm not against the idea. I just don't wanna sit here and try to dream up every possible scenario and try to put a regulation around it. I think there's a happy medium somewhere between where you wanna be and what maybe what's in here now.
I really think changing that word to shall, it gives a bite to every one of those three items. And I think, I agree with you. I think we're okay with that.
I think it needs to be general like that.
Yeah. If you,
I think some of those things would.
on number 3, shall advise the applicant that certain analysis and study will be performed by a qualified party selected by the county. I mean, that's pretty general, but it's pretty, it's got the bite we want.
Emily, I think some of what you were saying on that would go in the construction management plan. Like if you wanted soil testing done.
Right,
And so I think that would be 14601.
Make a note of that when we get
Will
to it.
do.
Yeah.
We'll get it to there. All right.
I have a couple in mind that I would like that I'm not entirely sure every one of them needs, but that would be on the list of things to go through for every cup. Just make sure none of these are needed, or whichever ones are needed.
So it'd be good to have that list to see what you need. Okay.
All right, let's go to 14-47B. And then I want to spend a little time before we hit our 2-hour mark talking about next meeting. Okay, reimbursement of county expenses. All applicants and their successors are obligated to reimburse the county for reasonable expenses it incurs at its discretion in retaining engineers and other professionals to review the information and plans as part of the application for the conditional use permit. This obligation extends to any such expense so incurred, regardless of whether the applicant is approved or denied. I think that's some pretty good language.
Out of curiosity, are monies bonded up front to cover those expenses, or is it just a reliance on courts to collect if the vendor walks away, if they're denied?
So I don't know that that's part of the bond. I think it's a bill from the county saying, we hired this person,
Yep.
they done this study, this is what the cost of it is.
And if they don't pay, you would turn it in for collection. Okay.
All right, so we're okay
And
with,
obviously, if they don't pay, we wouldn't proceed.
Right,
with that.
yeah. I'm thinking of a scenario where there's buyer's remorse. We did all these studies and found out this site is not gonna be approved and I'm angry and I don't wanna pay. So I'm gonna, yeah.
Is there a section on public notification? I'm missing here. Don't we talk about that in here?
public
For conditional
notification
use permit?
Public notification for,
For,
for CUP.
for near landowners, landowners,
yeah, and that's in Article 20.
Article 20.
Yeah, it's
Well,
about.
there's nothing out, there's nothing in the solar.
It's not the solar section, it's
Juniper.
General.
I just, as far as expenses are concerned, do we need to mention public notification in this paragraph
That's
B?
already covered.
It's already done?
Yeah, we changed that last year.
Okay.
okay. Let's talk about next week. Where you want to start and where you want to finish? What's our goal? I say we start 14-408. Just let's talk about doing this in chronological order earlier.
Yeah.
14-408. What's a reasonable goal for 2 hours? So we can study up and be ready for that.
I don't think 14.5 will take very long. I could be wrong, but I think the only thing brought up was the topography of with contours at 2 feet. That was brought up as it might be an issue because it's hard to read. Most maps nowadays that we will be looking at are electronic, and so we don't really have the problems that you would have with paper maps and having that fine detail. And so I don't really think that's an issue.
So you think 14.5 will go fast?
I do.
I had the same opinion when I read through it prior to this meeting. That it'd go quick.
Well, somebody throw something out there.
Can we get through 6?
Shoot for 6.
You always try to get.
So 14.408 through 14.6?
Yeah, they're both pretty straightforward.
14.408 to 14
Through
through
14.6,
14.6.
up to 14.7.
14.7?
Up to 14.7.
Okay,
So
go all the
we
way
get
through.
all the way through 14.6.
Yep.
I think that's reasonable.
So everyone, I will not be here next week. I'm out of town. But this RPR spec kind of falls into that construction management plan, so I will send that to Darren. And then any other comments I got, or ideas, I'll email to you too, and I'll follow along on YouTube.
Darren, did you get any kind of conference thing worked out as far as being able to conference in people?
Not yet.
Okay.
It's in their hands.
It's in their hands. It's in the commissioners' hands.
First, let me say to you, I think we're making really good progress. I think we'll all come in here with a can-do attitude. I said to the commissioners earlier, and I think with you this last meeting, that we need to find the common ground, and that's exactly what we're doing tonight. We're finding that common ground. I'm really, really pleased with everybody's participation. You know, everybody's being real frank and being real upfront with what they think and need. And boy, that just benefits the county. So good work. Keep it up. Darren.
I got something real quick, and I know we're winding it down. But to speak about what Daniel said about the less verbiage, there's court cases that back planning and zoning commissions, conditions that they add that are not in the regulations will stand in court. Because if you listen to some of my staff reports, I always finish it with, what do I finish it with?
Overland Park.
Golden for Solar Park.
Yeah, and that covers conditions that they want to add. So if you get too much verbiage, it ties the planning and zoning's hands to add conditions to it. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Everybody probably ought to have a copy of that golden rules.
It's in everybody's book. We don't have a book anymore.
So you might make a few copies next time.
Okay. Real quick, I did find in the comp plan, and it does only talk about Linn.
Okay, all
I
right.
mean, it talks about solar, but as far as the map, it's only got a potential wind turbine areas. It doesn't have a solar.
Okay. Any last words? Thank you all. I think you did a great job. We'll see you next Wednesday, same bat time, same bat station.
Yeah, regular meetings next Tuesday at 7:00.
So
Yeah.
see you next week.
Yeah. Sure.
No problem.
Sure.
And real quick, I should have everything downloaded to SharePoint for our regular meeting.
Yeah, you gotta put sure.
I gotta get something.
I'll be right back.